There are murders that are hard to believe. Our minds have a hard time understanding how a human being could commit such atrocious crimes. Sometimes we just think that they are the work of some wild animal or an unknown monster that lurks in the dark, waiting for victims to commit its most vile acts. However, in most cases, reality overcomes imagination. And those we believe to be incapable of committing such crimes turn out to be not only the perpetrators, but the real monsters disguised in a jacket, tie, and a lying smile. Today's case is proof of this, and if you join us in this opportunity, you too will discover the true story of the monster that took the lives of hundreds of people. Do you dare to follow us to the heart of the events? Then, let's begin. This monster claimed the lives of hundreds of people. Our story begins in the 16th century, specifically in the rural village of Bedberg in Germany, a place far away and sufficiently disconnected from the life of the big cities that people's lives weren't hectic at all. In Bedberg, families grew up together, side by side, among farms and small buildings that gradually appeared throughout the village. However, as time went by, not only large investments arrived, but also a deadly and bloody danger that couldn't be explained. At first, the authorities were baffled. During the nights of the full moon, those who walked the streets in the wee hours of the morning encountered a bloodthirsty death that terrified all the villagers. We are talking about murders similar to those committed by wild animals. The bodies were found completely torn and, on some occasions, dismembered and full of ferocious marks wherever the creature had attacked. The first hypothesis about the possible culprit revolved around some wild creature that inhabited the abundant forests of the area. However, after numerous hunts and reconnaissance in the area, there was no breakthrough. It was quite the opposite. During the following full moon, one of the most chilling events ever recorded in all of Germany occurred. That morning, the authorities found a grotesque scene. About 13 children and women had been murdered. They all bore the same wounds as in the previous cases, and there was even a pregnant woman among the victims. The savagery was so absolute and horrendous that a curfew was imposed and patrols were doubled at night. Sadly, this failed to prevent the killings. The murders continued month after month, and even livestock was also caught up in the carnage. Sheep, pigs, and horses were regularly attacked by this savage beast. For most, there was no doubt. Those attacks had been perpetrated by some pack of wolves that had managed to successfully hide from the hunters. However, another theory began to gain strength in the village. The more superstitious spoke of werewolves and mentioned how suspicious the murders were since they only occurred during the full moon. The idea of a werewolf began to gain ground among the locals. The idea made more and more sense, and the men were determined to put an end to this insatiable massacre. So they armed themselves with crossbows, torches, and all kinds of tools. Then, when the full moon came, they waited. The creature emerged from the darkness to attack the decoy they had set up. When they saw it, they all felt an indescribable fear. It was a wild creature, large and powerful, with a destructive jaw. However, the fear quickly disappeared to be replaced by rage. The group of men pounced on the werewolf and managed to wound it, but not trap it. The beast quickly fled, oblivious to the trail of blood it was leaving along the ground. When daylight came, the men found the trail and followed it until they reached one of the richest farms in the area. They didn't care about this because they were determined to get to the bottom of the matter, and when they entered the barn, they discovered something impossible. Among the straw, Peter Stump, a respected and powerful farmer, was wounded, bloody and completely unconscious. Stump was captured by the citizens and handed over to the authorities. The interrogation of his case revealed even darker secrets. Stump got tired of denying the accusations and admitted not only that he was responsible for those massacres, but that he had been practicing witchcraft since childhood. Somehow, Stump was no longer afraid of death, since he was supposedly an agent of the devil who had been sent on a mission. According to his testimony, thanks to a dark power, he could transform himself into this wild beast and wreak havoc wherever he went. During the trial, it was found that Stump had not only been responsible for countless murders, but had also murdered his children, his slaves, and one of his former wives. In just 25 years, this man had caused so much mayhem and death that his fate was decided despite the pleas of the defense. Although Stump was a respected member of society, his actions had spoken loudly enough and he was sentenced to death. Though not just any death. Stump's body was torn apart by a giant wheel that jabbed him with hot irons until his skin and bones were ripped to the shreds. His bloody death was intended to discourage any other potential demon worshippers and send a message to the dark forces. However, this didn't prevent the village from continuing to experience horrifying events that are impossible to explain with rational words. Regardless of this, from that date on, Stump was known to history as the Werewolf of Bedberg and was sentenced for the crime of murder, cannibalism, witchcraft, and sorcery. The rest of his body was cremated and the ashes were hidden in an unknown location. The story ends here, although there are those who claim that these ashes were used for terrible acts in the future. Still, we know little more about his disturbing crimes, which shows us that sometimes reality is superior to fiction. Was Stump really a werewolf, or rather a serial killer? This question is difficult to answer, but one thing is certain. The most heinous crimes are rarely the work of nature or animals. The human being is a sinister creature and sometimes reveals its true and dark form. If you don't believe it, we invite you to join us to discover other really creepy cases in which the suspects prove to be much more cruel and savage than the hungriest lion in Africa. Do you dare to know their stories? If so, then check out these videos.